Okay, in this video we're going to take a look at what's called the midpoint formula. And this can easily be confused into something more complicated than it really is. What we actually have in the midpoint formula is a way to pinpoint the exact halfway spot between two points that we happen to know a location for. And this is particularly helpful when this point right here, when its location is not at a nice set of whole number coordinates that we can actually read from a graph. So whether you don't have a picture to look at or it happens to be some decimals and fractions you aren't sure about, that's when this really becomes useful. If they all ended up having halfway spots at nice whole number coordinates, we wouldn't even need this formula. We could just draw a picture every time. But in this case, it's not going to be that simple. Now, to find that location, we're trying to find the x coordinate and the y coordinate of that location. This isn't really near as bad as it appears. This right here is basically an average. I'm going to add up all the x coordinates and divide them by how many there are. In this case, I've only got 2 points. Okay, so if I add up the x coordinates and divide by 2, if I add up both 2 of them and divide by 2, because that's how many there are, I should get the average x coordinate. That's all I'm really doing. So in this case, I'm going to take 2 plus 5 and divide that by 2. Which gives me 7 divided by 2, and that's not a nice whole number. That is 3.5 if you would rather write it as a decimal. It doesn't really matter which way you write it. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the y coordinates. Okay, so I've got 2 different y coordinates. Okay. It's 1 plus 4 divided by 2, which gives me 5 divided by 2, which happens to be 2.5. And what I've just found is the location right here of that halfway spot. Okay, notice it's 0.5s, which sometimes you can see on a graph, sometimes you can't, but this could be anything. You might get whole numbers here, you might get some really messy fractions and decimals, but it's going to identify the exact halfway spot, no matter how big or small these coordinates seem to be. So it works in pretty much any scenario. You might have a distance of inches, you might have a distance of miles. This formula still finds the exact halfway point, which is useful in a lot of different applications. So that's it for midpoint formula. It looks complicated with all the 1s and 2s, but if you think about it, just adding up the x's and taking the average, dividing by how many there are, and in this case you're talking about 2 points, so there's only going to be 2 spots to add up the x's, divide by 2, add up the y's, divide by 2, and you've got the halfway spot.